Hello, I am sorry. I am sorry I scheduled this at the wrong time. I'm a smart cookie like that. Sometimes I will misclick and not realize, note to me, check on the time when I bloody schedule it. It's been sat there since bloody Tuesday and I didn't even notice. But anyway, that was past me's issue. Current me's issue is reading my book. I am Bryony Rose Smith, live from the Forbidden Library, and today we are finishing off Moon Girl on Moonrise, in which I am now going to have to summarize 88% of a book. Are you ready? I'm not. I've thought about this off stream, like how can I condense this down well enough? And this is the problem I have when I want to market my book, because I'm like, how can I condense it down and tell people about it? But let's give it a go, shall we? Let's try keep it under 5 minutes. Okay. 6 minutes, 12, 13, 14, 15. Let's go. Okay, so Dreda is someone who lives in a world that's been getting superhero. We're having a day. It's fine. Dreda Toth is a girl who lives in a superhero world. It's a superhero world because people have been randomly waking up with powers since the turn of the millennium, about in the year 2000, and it is good old 2015. Dreda wants to get a job, but it's quite dangerous at the moment if you don't have powers, because you end up getting rolled up in villain plans and things like that. It's not good. It's not good for anyone. But she thinks she's got a breakthrough. She gives her CV to an office, thinks it's going to be great, but turns out that really low standard of hiring was because it was a villain hiring for hostages, where she gets into this hostage situations from a guy called Apex Illusionist, where she meets another guy there who's also cool, and then she badasses her way out, and the other guy there turns out he's a hero and he was there undercover, and another hero turns up, gets them out, and they go back into another van, and he goes like, yeah, you're cool, you broke the villain's arms and got us out, do you want to be a hero? And she's like, oh, maybe. She goes through the tests, realizes that she does want to actually do this because she is a badass and it'd be nice to be able to make money out of your hobby, you know. Passes all the tests, then goes to Hero Boot Camp. And Hero Boot Camp is basically, she's shown around by another lady who's her favorite hero, Mr. Paragon. She loves her, she's great. Because she saved her 3 years ago. Miss Paragon saved Dreda. But Miss Paragon doesn't really remember her until Dreda starts talking about her past and how she doesn't really know how to use computers, she didn't really go to school, kind of thing. And Miss Paragon puts 2 and 2 together and realizes that Dreda is the person she rescued from horrible experiments on tricksters and things a long time ago. So she puts her research notes and the reports and stuff onto a computer for Dreda, because Dreda's still very sensitive about it, so she wasn't sure if she wanted to look at it. So Claire, Mr. Paragon, puts it on the computer for her with a password so that no one else can look at it, and if she wants to, it's there. So she goes to the guy she met before, who we know now as Timmy, and Tim helps her figure out a computer. She goes through all the information that she's supposed to for her boot camp, blah blah blah. She manages to finish it by the end of the week and she goes home. Yay, home early because she did all her paperwork. Isn't she good? Tim's curiosity gets the best out of him. He hacks into the file about her past and learns about her past. The two of them have a lot of drama the next week. He also talks to Claire about her past, and Claire says, as punishment for being a nosy bar steward, you have to be her mentor. So after they've sort of made up, after knowing about the past and everything like that, they come to understand each other a bit better. He gets to be her mentor, she gets her suits and stuff, and they go out. And then she stops her first villain, Cutcaster, from stopping a jewelry heist. You know, typical superhero stuff. But she feels a weird heat energy at the time. It's very strange. Doesn't think too much about it. Not sure what to do. And they go back. Then what happens? Oh yeah, the next day, we're nearly at the 5-minute mark. We're really past the 5-minute mark. The next day, Timmy goes to the prison to question Apex Illusionist about Drader's past because he wants to know more, and he thought of a connection between what Apex wants and what the people in Drader's past want. And he goes to Apex, visiting him as a civilian because Apex is his dad. Really, really shitty dad. They talk a little bit. Dad gives an approval on Drader as a girlfriend, even though she broke both of his arms. But at the same time, there's a prison break. Some mysterious villains break into the prison to kidnap Apex Illusionist. All the heroes are scrambled. They all arrive at the scene. Hello, necromancer. Oh, Jesus Christ. I can't talk today. This is going to be really interesting. But hello. Welcome. So they kidnap the villain. And they make him more powerful. And then he puts the whole city to sleep. Just as Timmy and Drader find the villain's hideout. And then they go into a dream sequence. And then we have a Zelda-inspired dream. And then we have an Alice in Wonderland-inspired dream. And then the two of them wake up. And Timmy's made a deal with his dad. And he's managed to get him to wake up a few people. So they wake up Selena and Taya and Pandora. But Pandora does a big scream when she wakes up because they all are having horrible nightmares, most likely. And hurts Timmy's hearing. So now they have to deal with that as well, which I think they did. Yes, because they went to go get liberate some hearing aids for Timmy once the bleeding stopped. And I think that's about where we got up to. That's the best summary I can give. And that went just over 5 minutes for 88% of a book. I'm happy with that. So, let's continue. Chapter 14, Excalibur. They met up with the others outside, and now Tim could hear they could make a more concrete plan. Phase 1 included what had put them in the mess to begin with, and Tim stood well back. A few warehouses out from the warehouse they knew the products were in, Pandora took a breath. She screamed in the direction of the product's HQ, now awake, able to funnel the sound so that she didn't hurt anyone other than her. American. Gotta be American right now. That should get their attention. Pandora smiled. Wonder who we'll get, Selena said, bouncing like an excited child on Christmas. We should get moving. Tim looked to Drader and Tiger, and they split. Tiger went left of the Wilder sisters, and Tim and Drader went right. They went around the long way and headed to the HQ after getting some distance. The hope was that the Wilders could distract at least some of them, making it easier to get to Apex. They had been concerned about the possibility of the Wilders ending up with more than they can handle, but Drader knew what they were up against. They wouldn't leave Apex without good protection. She predicted 5 Pywen and 6 Galantine would go for the distraction. When she felt a strong gust of wind not far away, she could tell that she was at least right about 5. After that, if Drader's thoughts were right, then she'd be dealing with 1 Excalibur, Tiger would be dealing with 3 Arendite, and Tim would go after Apex. Not only because it was his villain, but because with his hearing impaired, it was best he didn't face a product. Excalibur was too much of a bad matchup anyway, and Arendite wasn't an easy fight either. They agreed Light Tiger and Moongirl would clear the way for him. Just outside of the warehouse that was their destination, Drader skidded to a halt and held Tim back as a fireball blasted in their path. Drader held Tim tight a moment, feeling his breathing heavy. Must have been in pain. She frowned, but she had to trust that he could do what was needed. She wouldn't underestimate him. Frigid hack, Moongirl, Excalibur said in her deadpan voice, her skin shining with an odd texture, flames flicking from her mouth when she spoke. They looked up and Dreda cursed, seeing her on the roof of the warehouse they wanted to get to. "We're here to stop you!" Tim barked at her, pushing himself from Dreda's arms, and she took the opportunity to go around and find a way up. There was no way she could keep Excalibur busy without getting to her. She had zero options when it came to ranged combat. Downside of not having a trick. "I'm not sure how you and some of the other so-called heroes are awake, but you will not stop us. I'll give you this one chance to leave. At the prison you're in my way, but if you turn around now, then all will be well for both of us." She offered a deal. Dreda smiled a bit under her mask. One hadn't changed. She didn't like to take a life. "You break for the door. I'll need you to distract her while I get to her," Dreda said, hoping it was loud enough for Tim to hear, but quiet enough for one to miss. "Got it," he whispered back, and then yelled up to one, "We can't turn back now! Hero, hero, hero!" There's no cameras, Timmy. You don't have to go with the cheesy hero dialogue. He barked at her and bolted for the door. Dreda followed him for a bit until the first fireball hit. She let it hit the ground, then jumped through the cooling flames to the wall of the warehouse, one's blind spot. Tim watched her, spotting the fire escape she was heading to, and then moved his attention back to one. "It won't be so easy," she hissed. Luckily for Tim, now that they weren't in a cramped prison hallway, she was a lot easier to deal with. Fireballs were easier to dodge when you had time to guess the trajectory. My ability to speak today. Trajectory. But then one skimmed him, and he got confused. He could have sworn he was out of the way when he looked up for the next one, and he saw its path. But when he moved, the fireball's trajectory bended. I'm pretty sure bended isn't a proper word there. I'm pretty sure it should be bent. Shit. He growled, darting under it, and at the last minute, so it didn't have time to correct itself. He readied to dodge the next one, but it never came. He watched Dreda sneak up behind the holy sword, and wasted no time in heading for the warehouse now that he knew Dreda was where she needed to be. The first thing Dreda tried to do after sneaking up on one was what she always tried to do in a fight: take out the legs. She sweep-kicked the unsuspecting villain, and gravity took her away. Excalibur rolled before she knew it. Her body was hanging off the side of the warehouse roof. Dreda frowned a bit at the pain in her leg, remembering how much she disliked fighting one. The strange texture of her skin made it hard. Kicking her was like kicking a brick wall. Even if she never took a hit, she would always come out with some kind of injury against her. "I'll be your opponent, Excalibur," Dreda said as she approached the edge. She quickly darted back when she heard a deep breath, and missed the tower of fire that once spat at her by inches. "I gave you a chance to get away, Moon Girl." Excalibur pulled herself back onto the roof. "You should have taken it." One didn't get any reaction from her threat, since as soon as she was on her feet again, Dreda was already moving in for her next attack. She leant back from a punch to her stomach, and Dreda's fist followed through, uppercutting the air. With her entire body open, a roundhouse kick landed in Dreda's side, and that threw her off balance. She stumbled away and skidded, gritting her teeth as she felt a heel on the edge of the building. She took a moment to get her balance back, but dropped that idea when she looked up. To most, it wouldn't have meant anything, but Dreda knew her opponent. She knew when one raised her arms and spun like a dancer, what was coming, so she darted towards her. As fire started to gather, it moved behind one, making a shape like a large lizard's tail, following her spin, building up until it was large enough to swing at her opponent. She pulled it back, and that was the opening Drada was going for. As soon as the fire was away from her body, as soon as one had her attack ready, and the only moment her guard was down, Drada's fist plowed into her stomach. Her breath was completely taken from her, and gravity started to pull her down. But then a kick into the face threw one on her back. The fire disappeared with the trickster's breath. Excalibur blinked up to the sky, and Drada went to give her a finishing blow. Not a hit to kill her, she remembered Tim's words on that, but to knock her out. Keep her out of the fight. Then she could help Tim. She pulled her fist back, but one said something. Something that made her stop. 4. She was surprised she'd figured it out. 2 could have told her, but the tone of her voice said he didn't. She sounded too surprised. It's you, isn't it? She hesitated too long, and 1 was getting to her feet. Drada just let her. She'd missed her chance already. You can predict my moves and keep up with me despite not showing any signs of a trick. No one else can do that, 1 stated, sounding hopeful. Drada sighed, pulling her mask down and pushing her goggles onto her head. What does it matter? I still have to stop you. It matters to know you are all right, 1 replied, following suit as she pulled back the black veil that had concealed her identity to reveal a warm smile. We were worried when you didn't make it back. Drada couldn't help but be a bit happy. She worried about them too. She was glad she was cared about enough to be missed. But this wasn't the kind of situation to have a reunion. You have to stop what you're doing, 1, she told her. What are you even doing carrying on that horrible experiment? You know the answer to that one, 1 replied simply. They wanted people to realize what they are. That's what Drada knew of it, but she had no idea what the hell they meant by that. She always assumed they meant it in the same way Apex did. Make people see the monsters they are. But she could never be sure. She could never get a straight answer out of them. Hello, Luke! Welcome! Perfect timing. Besides, 1 carried on, we are at least trying to change the way things happen. We don't want to have the slaughter of thousands the same way the project did. So you're just putting people through it in their heads, she hissed. I am good, how are you? Real or unreal, it was never something anyone should have to go through. It was wrong, no matter how you did it. Drada glared at her in anger. She couldn't have been trying to force people to be something else. She just got angrier when 1 just nodded. The same project, different methods. Drada took a breath and tried her best not to let her anger take over. She nearly slipped into the monster she used to be, but she wasn't going to let that happen again. She didn't want to disappoint him again. Taking a breath to clear the red haze, she realized her opportunity. What happened to the project? She asked. And when she asked, she realized what it meant. She was ready. She was ready to face her past. She was ready to help Claire and Tim find out more about Project Trickster and stop it. She felt the resolve set in her. No one would go through what she did. In her mind, in their mind, in real life, hell, she'd try to stop it if it somehow happened in an alternative dimension. Project Trickster had to stop. We brought it to an end. 1 told her information to help that effort. We killed many of the scientists, but Mother and Father got away, and we've been unable to track them down. Mother and Father were what they knew the head scientists to be, and Drader wished the products had managed to kill the heartless pair. With them still at large, they could have restarted the project as far as she knew. Some of the other products left us, and some didn't make it. We were the only ones to stick together and stick to our goals. One finished. Drader nodded as she thought it through, wondering how many of the other products survived, wondering how many more there were out there and where they could be. You could come back to us if you wanted. Warden spoke, and Drader's eyes met hers. We wouldn't be forced to hurt you anymore. We could just be a family. Except for two, of course. As nice as that sounded, Drader shook her head. One frowned. I don't want to fight you for. Yeah. D&D streams are also fun. Don't call me that, Drader snapped. I am not Product 4 anymore. You should have noticed that. Excalibur put a hand to her neck. She knew what she meant. Product 4 would not have hesitated no matter what happened. If Product 4 had been an enemy, Product 4 would have killed that enemy. If Product 4 had an enemy, Product 4 would have killed that enemy. I see, one said, disappointed. I'm Moon Girl. Drader pulled down her goggles and covered her face with her mask again, and I will stop you. Fine. One's eyes narrowed, and she let down the veil again. I am Excalibur, and I will end you, Moon Girl. I love that bit. Where they're just like, yeah, we're friends. We love each other. But... text-based D&D game? That's got to be difficult. Because I find that sometimes it's really hard not to, like, talk over people. In D&D, does it get, like, really, really fast in the chat sometimes for a text-based D&D? Yes, that is the very roll credits moment. I feel like that's the moment Drader really does become Moon Girl. That's the time when she's like, yes, I know who I am now. And I am ready to go. But now we skip over to what Timmy's doing. In Chapter 15, Dream Dragon. Tim burst into the large empty warehouse, wary of any sort of attack. He was worried that maybe one of the products had stayed behind. Personally, he could only account for two, Pai Wen and Excalibur. Oh, that's cool. I have a group of friends we've been playing D&D for years as well. It's really nice. It's comfy. Nice and comfy. Other than that, he was left to assume that Galantine went with Pai Wen and Arendite was with Tiger. At least that's what he hoped. Fair enough. Interesting. His steps echoed, and it was weird with his hearing impaired. He heard the first echo, but the rest were too quiet. It was disorientating, like someone strumming a guitar then putting their hands on the strings to stop the noise immediately. He'd never admit to anyone, but he was scared of going into battle like this. He already had hardened lenses in his mask, since he really couldn't go without his glasses. He didn't like the idea of his hearing not being able to compensate anymore. For the first time in a while, he was reassured by his surroundings melting away. Even if Drader had told him that Galantine had a similar trick, He still knew his father's illusions. It was strange. Like they had an energy signature he could just recognize. This fit his father's work, and he could safely assume all the defenses were gone if the king was making a move. The tall, smooth walls of the warehouse rounded and became rough as they turned into stone. The world morphed into a cave still as big as the warehouse. The cave had crystal ball-like orbs scattered across the ground, each and every one lit up with colour. No one's died yet. Everyone's safe. He couldn't hear anything from them, whether that was just his hearing or them only showing images, he wasn't sure. But they had all sorts of different people in all sorts of different situations. Mostly bad situations, he noted. Were these people's dreams? He finished his thought out loud. Ding, ding, ding! Suddenly Hack spun around to see his father sat on a throne of black and red in the middle of the piles of scattered orbs, watching the one in his hand with interest. Welcome to my hoard, Lukey. Tim shook his head in disbelief. You have a hoard of dreams? Yep. He threw the orb he was looking at over his shoulder and picked up another. Beautiful, isn't it? Tim was just... Oh, shit. I did not just hit my tea and not spill a little tea. It's okay. It's not too much tea, and luckily I didn't get it on my keyboard. So we're fine. But I just need to clean that up a second. Yeah, safe. And also, it wasn't an amount of tea that makes me sad that I didn't get to drink it. It's fine. We're safe. Where was I? Tim was actually pretty upset. What the hell happened to his dad when he hit 90? Because he seemed to have gotten even more insane. So what? You want to keep people asleep so you can collect their dreams? He asked, not sure he even wanted an answer. Hoard, but yes, I would very much like that. Hoard. He wondered why he was so picky on the phrase. What the hell are you, some kind of dragon or— Yes! Apex interrupted him, dropping the orb he was holding and turning his full attention to Tim. I'm in a cave with a hoard. What else would I be? Tim just stared. Was he serious? Dad? He started, very, very worried. You are too. You just have a hoard of technology, and maybe even a redhead soon, and— Dad! He snapped, successfully shutting up the mad rant. You've always been insane, but this? You're joking, right? He trailed off when he saw a look of sorrow in his father's face. The man closed his eyes and sighed as he raised from his illusionary throne. I suppose it was a bit too much to expect you to believe me. I wouldn't have before either, he said then, when he opened his eyes again and a grin split his face, and the villain Apex Illusionist replaced his father. Shall we see if you can stop me then, frigid hack? Darkness consumed his father and grew. Tim had to keep stepping back as he watched it grow and grow until it was blasted away by a large pair of wings. So much for me getting an easy fight, Tim grumbled as he faced his father down, in the form of a 15-foot tall dragon with scales as black as night. Flames of black licked Apex's lips as Tim watched, trying to get it through his head what he had to do. Flames shot his way, and suddenly he had no time to think. He just had to get out the way in what a limited space was now. In what was a limited space. now that Apex's dragon form took up most of the room, as illusionary as it may be. Tim didn't know the extent of the illusions anymore. Only a little messed up. It's fine. Everything's fine. I mean, there's not a dragon in every single book of mine. I don't know. What are you talking about? I don't like dragons. What are you talking about? He'd rather not find out if those claws could really cut, or if that black fire could really burn. He created ice beneath him and made it move with a quick jolt, springboarding him into the air past Apex's head. With a wave of a hand, a plate of ice appeared in the air, and Tim landed, skidding slightly but grabbing onto the edge to make sure he stayed on. Dragons are very cool. Dragons should be in every book. Every book would be improved with a dragon. He was glad to see his father was slow to react to it because he was still trying to get it through his head. He was fighting a freaking dragon! Okay, so a little thing on this is I wanted to put fecking dragon. I didn't want to put fucking, I wanted to put fecking. But my editor and my beta readers all said I'm not allowed to put fecking because it's not a real word and it's just me. Oh, one of our party members is a dragon rider too. Part celestial, part dragon though. No, our dragon rider is a kobold. A little white kobold called Snug, who we keep buying blankets for. And we make a blanket fort in our ship for. It's great, it's wonderful. He was fighting a freaking dragon! He was fighting a freaking dragon, and that freaking dragon was his freaking father! Feck! As much as Drader's dream was weird to be in, it was a dream. This was real. Or at least his father was deciding to fight as a freaking dragon was real. And how was he supposed to stop him? On a person, he knew where to aim, so he didn't kill him. But if his father was an illusionary dragon, how was he supposed to know what and where he was hitting? How was he supposed to stop him without killing him? Damn it, Dad! He barked and threw his arms out. With Apex at the center, a barrier of ice lances made a ball around him. They all appeared fast, sharp points glinting towards the dragon's hide. I don't want to hurt you, Dad. I don't know where I'm hitting with you like this, so please. Tim's voice fell on deaf ears, and Apex's tail hit him from his ice foothold, taking a few ice lances with it. Tim's concentration gone, the others fell to the ground. Tim flew across the room, his back crashing against the wall with force that sent the taste of metal into his mouth. Our party in this current game is a dragon girl and her dragon, an ex-prisoner, a war strategist, a yakuza, a bee-girl, and a cat. That sounds like a wonderful D&D party. We have a pixie, a halfling, a dragon rider, kobold, and a wizard that also is a hat because they did too many experiments in the back, so they are a hat on a mannequin, and a undead goblin. We did cross over with Pathfinder a little bit for some of these races, just for the fun and the spice. I am the pixie. Gravity pushed him to the ground, and shakily he tried to get up. Alright, he growled. No holding back then. He threw his hands up, and Apex tried to look around to see where the next attack would be. As he moved, he narrowly missed a giant ice sword from cutting off his wing. The sword, maybe 10 feet tall, fell, its double-edged blade ripping through the thin leather of the wing, and Apex roared. He threw his tail at Tim again, while he threw fire at the sword. Tim had suspected, but as he made an ice plate beneath him and flew out of the way, it was confirmed. The black flames weren't fire. His ice sword didn't melt, even though he had already made a new one just in case. A small part of him was glad that it wasn't true fire. He never would be able to imagine his father as a dragon of fire and destruction. Although it made the next move hurt more to do. Preoccupied with the first sword, Apex hadn't seen the second, so there was a roar of surprise and pain when it fell from the roof of the cave, skewering his tail to the ground. He didn't want to cause injuries, so he hoped that since a human wouldn't have a tail, that hopefully attacking that would just hurt him. Hopefully enough to knock his concentration so they could fight man to man again. The dragon went to bite him, and he jumped back off his ice plate, scarcely missing the rows of sharp teeth. He got a scent of his breath with how close he was to getting eaten, and oddly it made him feel drowsy. His foot landed on a foothold he made for himself, but he was weirdly lightheaded. He slipped right off the other side of the ice plate and hit hard on the ground below him. Tim scrambled to his feet again, blinking away the drowsiness. His eyes met the orbs filled with dreams, and he realized if he was a dragon that hoards dreams, it would make sense that his flames would put you to sleep. All the more reason to avoid them. Something else caught his eye about the orbs, but quickly he found himself having to dart away from a claw descending on him. He made ice beneath him, just about sliding out of the way, but the shock wave knocked him off his feet again, and he slid across the ground. Although he saw it again. Some of the orbs had gone blank. Nothing played in them. Blank and clear crystal balls dotted the colours of the rest, and he smirked. He hadn't knocked his concentration enough to stop him from being a dragon, but some were at least waking up from his citywide sleep spell. Tim got to his feet and took to the sky on a plate of ice again. One of his ice swords had shattered when it fell to the ground, but the one holding his tail down was still strong. He didn't want to do this, but he needed to knock his concentration more. "Sorry about this," he muttered, and reached his hand to the giant sword in the tail, as Apex had a ball of black fire ready to fire at him. The blade in his tail raised, twisted and ripped its way down his tail, splitting the end in two. Tim winced at the roar and moved away from the ball of fire that was completely off trajectory. He made two more swords, but forgot the fact that Apex would be able to get to him now that his tail wasn't pinned. The dragon darted for him, and he shot the two swords, but it was too slow to avoid the rows of sharp white teeth. They ripped into the flesh of his ankle, and his jaws clamped tight as he tried to get away. Tim's ice swords had already fired, and they carved new holes in the dragon's wings, but that was the last thing he remembered clearly of the fight. The black flames shot from the dragon's nostrils, and with his foot in his mouth, there was no avoiding it. They were warm, but not burning, warm like a blanket, and it pulled Tim's consciousness away. He could vaguely recall the rush of wind, but that was it before all was darkness. Apex watched his son fly across the room and crumple like the fragile paper a human body was. He let his form change again and walked over to his son on human legs. He could see him breathe. He was alive, and that was all the villain needed to know. "I hope you realize it soon, Luke," he said before taking his leave. And I need to drink my tea before it gets cold. Yummy! Energized! Back to Dreda. On the roof during her battle, Dreda had heard Tim yell and, worse, heard him slam against the wall of the warehouse. She wanted to get to him, to help him, but there was nothing she could do about it. No. Excalibur wasn't an opponent she could take her eyes off. Her arms already had bad burns because she got distracted, and she couldn't afford to let the fire catch on her hair or clothes. That was the key to fighting a fire trickster. Well, there were two keys. One was the same as people who walked on hot coals. As long as you're fast, the fire doesn't have time to burn you. So long as you didn't let anything catch, you were fine. Red Bull tea. Oh, I hate Red Bull. I can't do energy drinks. I hate even the smell of them. Can't do it. She was happy to find that her super costume was made of material that was flame retardant, and made a mental note to thank Vince later. The second key was to avoid the thrust created by the flames. When Excalibur threw fireballs Dreda's way, it wasn't the pain of the fire that would cause the damage. It was the rocket-like thrust the fire threw behind it. Better that way. I have friends that get a little dependent on their energy drinks, and I'm just like, oh, how can you stand that? It's gross. Gross. The easiest way to avoid that part was to stay in close range, which would be fine if she was fighting any other fire-using trickster. She danced around waves of flames and even darted through the last one, and threw a punch at Excalibur's face, but the holy sword grabbed her arm before she could pull back. Dreda found herself flipped, eyes suddenly on the blue sky, but there was no time to enjoy what was a cloudless day. She knew what came after a move like that, so she rolled onto her hands and over until her feet were on the ground again. Her eyes looked up to see a hole where she once was. Fighting you is just as fun as it was before, Excalibur said, whips of fire coming after Dreda from both sides. She darted under one on her left and ran around the new hole in the roof to try get to Excalibur's side again. She threw her elbow at the woman's side. Excalibur blocked it, but didn't block the backhand of Dreda's other arm, which sent her reeling. She didn't stop, because she knew if she gave an inch, Excalibur would take a mile. She threw a roundhouse kick, which she would never admit she didn't aim. She didn't have time, so when she felt contact, she couldn't be sure what she hit. But at least she got her balance from the kick again. At least when she got her balance from the kick again, Excalibur was on the ground. And Dreda knew she needed to keep it that way. She straddled the older woman and threw her fist down, only for it to be caught. Excalibur took a long breath, expecting Dreda to get off to avoid the fire about to shoot from her mouth, but instead Dreda's other hand took her chin and forced her to tilt her head up. The funnel of fire was thrown completely off target and safely over Dreda's head. Gritting her teeth and swallowing the leftover fire, Excalibur grabbed Dreda's hand and pulled it away and held it. Too many ands in that sentence and I hate it. And. Past me, no. She called the fire back with a deep breath, confident she'd won as she held Dreda in the way. It's been fun fighting you two, Dreda told her. She pulled her head back. Excalibur wondered why she was so confident. She wondered what the woman could possibly do to stop herself from being horrifically burned. She found out. As soon as she was about to let the fire out, Dreda's forehead came back down, colliding with hers with a loud crack. When in doubt, use your head! A bit later, Dreda's eyes opened. She was sprawled on top of Excalibur, and as she raised her head and blinked drearily, I'm pretty sure they meant blearily, She couldn't help but be a bit confused. That was until the pain of thousands of mini soldiers in her head deciding to wage war against her skull. Oh, shit. She groaned as she rolled off Excalibur, holding her head and flopping on her back next to the woman. Not my smartest plan, she admitted. Glad at least that Excalibur didn't show any signs of waking anytime soon. Why did I put any twice? That was unnecessary. It's fine. It's fine. She lay there for a while, just taking a few breaths, smiling to herself a little bit. She had missed them a little, if only for the challenge of the other the weapons were to fight. She wasn't Product 4 anymore. She was Moon Girl. And they weren't the products anymore. They were the weapons of the Round Table. She felt the air spinning at Pywin's instructions and the earth shake at Arendite's whims. But there was something she didn't hear or feel. Something she should have felt. Hack, she muttered. Getting up, she left Excalibur where she was and went to the hole they made during the fight. Hack! She barked down there. She got no answer. She didn't need to hear anything when she spotted the blue and red on the floor of the warehouse. Her blood froze. He didn't look good. Red blood clashed with his blue suit, and he was not moving. Hack! She yelled, hoping he'd move, hoping he'd respond, but he didn't. She got up, ignoring any injuries she had, and went to run to the fire escape, but stopped when Excalibur caught her eye. She turned her eyes to the villain, and her mind went through some logic. If she just left her, then she might escape. She was, without a doubt, acting as leader for the products. It would be very beneficial for them to get her behind bars. At the very least, it would slow down any further plans to raise people's strict levels. She glanced at the fire escape and resolved. It wasn't that far. She could get her to the ground where it would be easier for the police to take her, and hopefully it wouldn't mean Tim had to wait too long. He was tough. He could wait a few minutes. Hopefully. She nodded to herself and pulled out a pair of cuffs that all heroes carried around. Trick-dampening handcuffs so that it was easier for non-trickster police to take them away after they had done their job. Putting the cuffs on the woman, she hoisted the dead weight onto her shoulder and slowly took her down the fire escape, albeit frustratingly slowly, knowing that Tim was injured badly. As soon as she was on the ground, she dumped Excalibur roughly, then made a mad dash to the warehouse. Hack! She barked again as she opened the door and ran to him, skidding on her knees. He didn't respond, but at the very least she could see him breathing deeply. He didn't seem to be having trouble with the life-saving skill of getting oxygen, so that was definitely good. Thank God, she breathed. Up close, his injuries didn't seem quite as bad either. One of his ankles was ripped up pretty bad, but that was the only open wound she could see. There were likely some internal injuries with what she heard of the fight from the roof, so she was reluctant to move him in case there was any spinal damage. The world wasn't so kind, though. The ground gave a violent shake, and crashing through the wall of the warehouse came tumbling a dust-covered tiger. He rolled across the ground, coughing slowly, trying to move, but having been thrown through a brick and concrete, he was generally just surprised he was alive. Tiger! Drayton looked at him, the blood brighter on his white suit than Tim's blue. Got it? He coughed, more blood splattering to the ground as he was trying to get up. Gotta move, Moon! The world gave another violent shake, and what Leo was trying to tell her through his pain already started happening. A crack reached out from the hole Leo unwillingly made with his body and started spreading across the walls. God damn it. She went to call him 3 but stopped herself. It was going to be hard changing their names in her head. Arendite, she growled. The guy liked to take down buildings. He especially liked to do it with his victims inside, since it was nicer than killing them with your own 2 hands. Can you walk? She left him temporarily. He went to say yes. He was nearly at his feet, but his legs argued when the ground shook. Gravity suddenly felt heavy, and he felt himself about to make contact with the ground when Drada caught him. Leo stared at her surprise when she put his arm over her shoulder. What about Hack? He asked as he was already being dragged to the entrance. Shut up and walk, she ordered. The roof was started going, glass breaking and raining to the ground. Drada hissed, trying to keep her balance enough to keep up speed as the earth shook. Like with many of the products, she knew 3, and if only because of him, she knew a little something about the demolition of buildings. She knew as long as the support pillars were okay, then she had time. It wasn't exactly safe with debris falling from the roof, but she wasn't likely to get trapped until the pillars went. She glanced to them, and the cracks hadn't touched them yet. If she was quick, she'd have time, not only to get Leo out, but also to go back for Tim too. At the entrance, Drada threw Tiger from the building. In the same movement, turned to go back for Tim. Moon! He heard Drada call, and to some relief, she heard sirens too, which meant people were awake. As bad a shape as he was in, it seemed Tim had successfully stopped Apex. She skidded to Frigid Hack and bent down, trying to quickly gather him up in her arms. I've got you, she tried to say, maybe to him, maybe to reassure herself and her waning confidence that she would actually get out of here alive, but she was cut short by pain as a glass shard slashed her shoulder. She hissed. Luckily, it hit her shoulder blade, and the bone did its job and protected anything too vital. She lifted Tim from the ground and looked around. The pillars were starting to go. Shit. She was running out of time. There was no way she was making it to the door anymore, so instead she tried to look for an opening in the wall. Oi! And you're an absolute serial complimenter. Oh, shush. Oh, shush. Oh, shush, you. Shush. Stop it. You're distracting from the finale. Shit. Did I ask for your chat? No. Oi, you're not allowed to get in on this. Stop it. Stop it. Why are you so nice? Stop it. Shit. Why are you like this? Anyway, what was I up to? She was running out of time. There was no way she was making it to the door anymore, so she instead tried to look for an opening in the wall. There was bound to be one closer to her than the actual entrance to the building with the state of the building, which that is not what it says, and that is why it sounds bad when I read it. Her eyes focused on the one Leo made with his entrance. No. Shut up. You have a cool, original idea of being a necromantic bee, which is just cool. So, yeah. And Luke, you're a dinosaur. Who doesn't freaking love dinosaurs? Dinosaurs are great. Or at least have dinosaur theming, which is just awesome. Everyone loves dinosaurs. If they don't, they're lying! Her eyes focused on the one Leo made with his entrance. The area beneath the hole had crumbled a while ago, so it was a much closer way out. Albeit still not easy with the amount of rubble between her and the exit, but there was no time to hesitate. She tried to keep to what she thought was stable or at least settled pieces of rubble, but she slipped on a few rocks that moved unexpectedly. By some miracle, she hadn't fallen flat on her face yet. Shut up. Shut up. You're not supposed to... No, don't gang up on me like this. No! Too much niceness here. Gosh. This is the internet. We're supposed to be mean here on the internet, right? Why is it nice? She was so close when she heard the crash of a support pillar crumbling. And another. And another. Like dominoes bringing the whole building down. Adrenaline pushed her body into overdrive. She nearly slipped on more rubble but caught herself, holding Tim as tightly to herself as she could, then bolted as fast as her tired and beaten body would let her. She pushed herself to a limit, trying to keep enough spring in her burning muscles to bounce herself off a few last bits of rubble before finally making a last leap for the exit. Tim flew from her arms, rolling to safety, and she hit the ground hard as the building gave way to gravity, spraying dust out around like fog, and like a fog had suddenly rolled in. Drada coughed and spluttered, trying to get her lungs clear of the chalky substance. The overwhelming explosion-like crash started to fade, and she began to register the sirens on the edge of her perception past the coughing fit. She kept trying to get more air in her lungs past the coughing. She tried to get up, but it was then she realized some debris had fallen on her. It was heavy, and she didn't think what of the bones it had broken when it fell. All she knew is she had to get it off. It was crushing her. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't. Moon! Hack! Drada had never been happier to hear the loud shout of the younger Wilder as she raced to her. "We got ya!" Selena's voice came after a second comfort and relief flooded Drada's system. The two Wilders struggled to lift the rubble off her, but as soon as they did, Drada slowly crawled from under it, finally able to take some deep breaths of sweet, sweet oxygen. She glared when she saw camera crews following the Wilders around the corner of the building. American. We'll get the two of you out of here. Selena started to help her up. You can do the interviews later. That's not American. I don't know what that is. Oh well, who cares? Get heck out of here. She shrugged Selena off and shakily got to her feet. Moon, you're in no state to... Maybe it was some overconfidence from their victory. Maybe it's because of all the leftover adrenaline, but Drada wanted the world to know what she did. She wanted to show the world how unstoppable Moon Girl was. Problem was, she wasn't unstoppable, and when she got to her feet, she suddenly felt extremely lightheaded and fell back into Selena's arms. The elder Wilder sniggered. Idiot. Epilogue! Right at the end. Come on, water bottle, work with me. Thank you. I need hydration. Yeah, I like that little, like, I am so epic and I am amazing, maybe not, bleh. But that's okay, that's what friendship is for. Yeah, we're at the end of the book. Selena carried her around the back of the warehouse, where ambulances from HQ sat. Leo had already been taken away. Tim and Drada soon followed his path to the HQ infirmary, then to the hospital when their injuries were deemed too serious to be treated at HQ. Drada remembered from boot camp how being in the hospital worked as a hero. There was a wing of the hospital, the that HQ paid for, and the doctors that worked there were the only ones allowed to know the real reason they were there. If only because lying about the nature of an injury or illness could lead to a misdiagnosis. It was best things were honest, so heroes could be on their feet as soon as possible. Friends and family thought of it as a private healthcare wing of the hospital provided by the company they all just happened to work for, and were allowed to see them at normal visiting hours. If heroes wanted to see each other in hospital, they had to come half an hour after visiting hours, so no connections were made between them by the public. Dreda found the hospital's setup somewhat familiar, but what she didn't was the visitors. As part of the project, she'd obviously got hurt a lot, but she was patched up and left alone to heal. Not even the other products were allowed to come see her, so she found it nice, but weird when people came to see her. Miss Miggins had come to see her, and brought a stew, insisting that it would get her better faster than any hospital food, and lathered on about how tough her opponent must have been to put her in this state, and how she'd love to see the number she did on them. Because we all love Miggins. After that, Trish came in and fussed over her. She seemed to have the idea that Dreda would suddenly not want to be a hero anymore, but Dreda hadn't minded. Occupational hazard, right? She shrugged. Oh good, you're as insane as the rest. You will be a great hero, Moon Girl. Trish had smiled. Dreda took it as a compliment, guessing they had lost some heroes after their first hospital visit. Wimps. After knowing she was going to continue being a hero, Trish continued to give her a debrief. Apex got away, as did the products. No weapons. Bar Excalibur, who was caught, just before managing to melt her way out of the trick-dampening cuffs. Lanny and Claire managed to get another pair on her, and now Excalibur was in prison. Trish ended with a warning. I know you have history with this villain, and we have no policy against visiting them, but please be discreet. She said nothing more on the topic and left Dreda with a good luck with table tennis. Table? She tried to ask, but Trish just left her. She flopped back under her bed, and it was a few days later she found herself in a patient recovery room with the other heroes. It seems it was a tradition when a few of them ended up in hospital together. Once they were well enough, they took to this particular patient waiting room and assumed ownership of the ping pong table in an epic hero tournament of table tennis. Rosa, you suck. Sorry, that's American. Rosa, you suck. I don't even. Selena said as she missed yet another ball. This is hard, and I've never played this before. She snapped at her. At least you're not the worst anymore. Pandora pulled up another ping pong ball and served again. At least I'm not the worst anymore, even. She managed to hit it back a few times, but then it flew past her again. She sighed. Can I just fold? Wrong game. I know, Lanny said. You gotta learn. Leo, reigning champion, smirked. Dreda absolutely has skill issues with sports. She's terrible at sports. Dreda found herself tortured for a bit longer until Pandora could claim victory. As soon as the Wilder raised her arm in inevitable victory, Dreda slammed her paddle down and flopped on the sofa. You'll get it, Tim told her, sitting on the sofa by her. He was still on a crutch, but apparently that classed as well enough to play table tennis. Maybe in a million years, Dreda grumbled, then quickly changed the subject. How are you doing? Fine, he said simply, and Dreda gave him a hard look. He'd been bashed around by a dragon and nearly went deaf. Fine after a few days was a lie, and she could still see hearing aids, so his hearing wasn't back. Rage quitting. Dreda is a terrible sportsman. She will rage quit everything. He looked away, trying to pretend he didn't notice the scrutiny. His icy eyes glanced around the corner at her every so often to see if she was still glaring. This went on through the next table tennis match before he finally sighed in defeat. Most of my injuries will heal, he said, glancing around to make sure Pandora was out of earshot when he carried on in a hushed voice. But my ears won't heal. Completely. If I had left them, they would have, but forcing hearing aids before they were healed caused infection, and they said it's likely I'll never get my hearing back completely. Completely? She repeated. It'll come back a bit, but not to its full capacity, he informed her. Gonna have to wear these a lot more, he grumbled. She wasn't sure what to say, so she just put a hand on his shoulder, at least to show some kind of sympathy. He smirked at her awkwardness. Actually, she took her hand off after a few moments as she remembered something. When Leo inevitably wins, can I see you and Claire in my room after? Tim nodded, a bit confused, but decided he'd find out when he got there. As inevitable as tomorrow, the hero with heightened reflexes defended his title from challenger Lenny. They originally said no tricks, but Leo was let off since he couldn't really turn his off. It did make things somewhat unfair, but a bunch of people who had faced discrimination due to their powers were not about to get into that argument anytime soon. They just wanted to have fun and celebrate not losing any comrades in the last big adventure. After Drada found herself with Claire in her room, Tim had been taken away for a bit by the doctors for a checkup, so they had to wait. How do you feel after your first big adventure? Claire asked with a proud smile. Like I need to practice at table tennis. Drady? That's a straight up spelling mistake. Drady shrugged as Claire laughed. You'll get it, Claire said what Tim had. Slowly. Drady, I did it again! I did it twice in a row! Past me! Oh, no. Bad me. 2 spelling errors of a character's name. Oh, we give me an F. I deserve an F for English. Terrible. My old English teachers that must be just like groaning now. Terrible. It do be like that, and with names it's a bit easier to accidentally do it, because you look at it and then you tell Word to ignore it, or you tell things to ignore it, and you just kind of assume it's fine, and then sometimes you get shit like this. As long as it's only twice. Let's hope it's only twice. Drady slowly grumbled again. Claire let out a few moments of silence pass before saying, "How are you feeling about everything else, though?" Her tone turned a lot more serious and worried. About the weapons. Drada interrupted her. They aren't the products. They want to call themselves the weapons of the round table, so that's what I want to call them. Claire smiled. Not a week ago, Drada had been so shaky about the topic. Not 1 week ago, the girl was in her arms, crying like the world had ended, and now she... Nice to hear you sound so confident. Tim took the words out of Claire's mouth as he struggled to open the door on a crutch. Exactly what I was thinking, Claire said as she got up and helped him in. Drada waited until the injured Tim was sat down, trying to think of what to say, but he beat her to it. So what did you want to say? She took a breath. The two in the room waited patiently. I made a decision while fighting Excalibur, she said. I want to help you find those responsible for Project Trickster, and stop them from hurting anyone else. The two stared at her. It was a long step from the girl they met. Hell, it was a universe from the girl who found out the products were still alive a week ago and broke down. Awesome. Tim couldn't help but smile. Indeed, Claire smiled too. I even asked Excalibur about it during the fight. She carried on, smiling a bit to herself, glad they were happy. Glad they felt she made progress. The weapons are trying to do similar to the project, but are trying to find ways without killing so many. She said they took down the project when they escaped, but the two head scientists got away. Asher and Keza Morgan, Claire said, and Drada looked up at her surprised. You knew their names? She asked. Claire nodded. I've had 3 years to find out about this project. I at least learned that much. Drada nodded, embarrassed she'd underestimated her. Mother and... Drada stopped herself and shook her head. They are likely to set up another operation like Project Trickster, so we need to find them and stop them. Mother? Claire repeated. All those products knew them as Mother and Father. She told them, going to open her mouth again but stopped. And Tim caught it. And I was the unfortunate product that was able to call them that and it be true. She muttered, barely audible, and the two stared. They... Claire went to say it, but it wouldn't come out. Tim, on the other hand, slammed his fist down onto the table of the chair and rose with a, They put their own kid through that shit? He rose from his chair in anger, only to have his ankle protest and nearly fall over, if it wasn't for Claire catching him. I don't think of them as parents. Drada started as Tim sat back down with a pained look, and she couldn't tell if it was what she just told them or his ankle. They're monsters that need to be stopped. The only link I have to them is biological, and that's not enough for me to want to let them go for what they've done. Good. We'll stop them, Claire agreed. That we will, Tim agreed. Drada nodded. They'd stop a tragedy like Project Trickster from ever happening again. Whether people were aware of the first tragedy or not, they'd do it because that's what heroes do. The end! The end. And you can read my notes. Thank you so much for picking up this book. Moon Girl is a passion project that originally came from me trying to write out my anxiety, and now here it is, its own book. I hope you enjoyed it and will enjoy Drada's further adventures. I'd like to thank my friends and my family. Without them, this book would not exist. And a special thanks to Patreon, Sabrina Artist, who was wonderful. And she supported me very well, and she's gonna get a free book eventually. I promise you, Sabrina, wherever you are. Although I don't have a Patreon anymore, so. And there's a QR code for my website. But that's it. That's Moon Girl 1 Moonrise, and I can't add that to my books until Freedom because it doesn't count. Because I've already written it and read it. It doesn't count, which is sad. But I hope you enjoyed. You came at the best parts, to be fair. You came in at like the dream bit, which is like one of the best parts. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed. I'm very happy. I don't know about reading the sequels on this channel because obviously that's a case of you need like even more information. I don't know whether that suits streaming or not, so I probably won't read the sequels. It is a shame because I'd really like to, but it just won't really work, I don't think. So unless I can just have like a website be like, hey, if you want to know some shit, I'll put a glossary on here. But that will be it for Moon Girl. So the next book I have lined up, let me get it for you. Let me get the Amazon page up so that I can read you the blurb. Blurb, 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 blurb. Oh, I could just hide this. Oh, a minute, one minute. Is this one? No, not that one. Oh, I'll hide that too, though. That one? Yeah, that one. Okay, cool. Back to my library, back to my library. It's called When the Spirits Beckon. Oh no, something went wrong. Go back to my library. Why did something go wrong? Let me in. Let me in! Open book and new tab. Should we try that? No? Fudge nuggets. Oh, it's not working. Well, I'm gonna have to figure out why that's not working. I'm gonna have to find it somewhere else. When no! When the spirits beckon. It's more of a short story anthology with a theme kind of thing by Nathan Francis or something. Let me get it. No! Why are you being like this? Why is this hard to find? Me being very, very organized here. I can't spell. I don't think we'll go right into the next book. I want to tell you about it. And I'll give you the blurb at least. Aha! Found it. Nice. And apparently it's not bloody working anyway, so I need to like double check why that's happening. I can get it on my phone, but for some reason on the web one, it's not doing it. Okay, so When the Spirits Beckon, Book 1 of Beacon Trilogy by author Francis Nantha, I think. Here is the blurb for you. A satire that pokes fun at why we are all curious about what happens after death. Among common beliefs are staying back as ghosts if any of the dead has unfinished business, ancestral spirits can provide help from the beyond, common in Asian cultures, spirits have nothing better to do than be obsessed with us living creatures. These three beliefs have been weaved into the Beacon Trilogy, with an added problem, an overpopulation crisis in the afterworld. So the spirits need to tackle the issue at the root cause, in the realm of the living, meaning us. Book 1 addresses how the master plan starts with an email virus infecting humans. This satirical blend of fantasy, sci-fi, and the supernatural, encompassing mystery like no other. It's a very fancy description. I think it was a anthology sort of thing. Maybe not. But I have read the first like 10% already, and I was very entertained. Its reviews aren't very high, which is a bit sad, because I've read the first bit, and it sounds very good. Why is it like this? Read now. Something went wrong. What's going on? Very strange. So I definitely can't read that today, only because I is it working now? Yeah! Okay. I can show you the front cover as well while we're here. There we go. When the Spirits Beckon. So that's what you can look forward to next Sunday. As for the rest of today, I don't know. Let me have a quick look at what I got. I had predicted that this might happen, but I might not. The Moon Girl might not last that long. Oh, I know what we could do. Since we were just reading Moon Girl, you know. Would you like a preview of Moon Girl 2? Do you want me to read the start of the next book for you? Obviously, we're not going to read the next book. So, I could just read you a preview of it. Like, just the first chapter or so. Yeah, sounds good. Okay, let me get that sorted for you. Let it go. Ba-bo. There it is. Should probably change the cover here as well, actually. Because we're not currently reading Moon Girl anymore. We're reading Moon Girl too. Moon Girl. Currently reading Moon Girl 2. And this one's called Bell Toll. No, double L. I always got confused with that, whether it was toll with an E or toll with double L's. Yeah, it's Timmy! Frigid Hack. In his pretty cool casual outfit. No, we don't want it that big. Come here. That's all you can see now. There we go. Make it the right size. And perfect. We can read Moon Girl 2 now. Let's get some previews out there. Boop, ba-doo. Have I ever read The Watchers? No, I have not. Oh yeah, we get Undertaker. Let me have a look. Watchers. Dean. Oh, that one comes up quick. Ooh, spooky. Nope, that's not the right one. He has a lot of books. But anyway, Chapter 1, Fortuna Nagil. And you'll notice, if you watched my playthrough, this is the name of the Final Fantasy character I've been using. Dreda Toth came the call for a twitchy redhead in the waiting room of Iwan City Prison. Shakily, Dreda took a breath and rose from her seat after pulling her twiddling thumbs apart. Dreda Toth is Dreda's full name. Or at least her last name is Toth. Striding past a few others waiting for their call, she pushed her way through a single blue door on the other side of the room. The room she entered was a wall splitting exactly in half. The separator of itself made of two halves. The top half was glass, the second half was wooden desks with partitions on each side. At each desk was a cold, hard steel wooden stool. Steel wooden stool? No, there's no wood in there, me. Why did I want to make it wooden for a minute there? All the ones on Dreda's side were taken except one. She took the seat, then with a glance to the brunette on the other side of the glass, she picked up the phone, wired to the wall. Hey, she said awkwardly. Hi. The brunette answered. So, Dreda gave a small smile. Fortuna Nagil. 1. Excalibur, and now Fortuna Nagil, leader of the weapons of the Round Table that threw the city into chaos only a few weeks ago. And this is the catch-up summary, in case it's a while between each book. How did they turn the city upside down? They powered up an illusionist and put the entire city to sleep. It didn't sound like something that was particularly deadly, but the death toll was insane. Too many kids fell off climbing frames and broke their necks. Too many cars crashed and too many patients went unattended. Too many died. And those responsible got away. Escaped and faded away, lost until they made their next move. The city streets were lined with flowers now, and the city was starting to recover. Dreda, Tim and Leo had recovered nicely from nearly having a warehouse dropped on them, and were back in the field. Tim sadly didn't escape permanent damage. When he and Dreda tried to wake other heroes from this cursed sleep, to help them, Pandora had woken from a nightmare. Sadly, with her trick, her scream was so loud it took out Tim's hearing completely, and in order to get it back, they had to risk infection by putting in hearing aids before his ears were healed. They did get infected, and though Tim could now hear, it wasn't very well. He had to wear hearing aids most of the time now. Luckily, his mask hid them well as Widget hack, so the public hadn't noticed them, and Tim had been reluctant to accept them. He took them off at every opportunity. During this, the only one they managed to capture was Fortuna, the leader of the Weapons and Product 1, the only survivor from Series 1 of the mass murdering Project Tweakstar. Now that is the last thing I want to put some ooh on, Jesus. Trickster. Someone who meant a lot to Dreda. Someone who had been through hell longer than she had. After everything happened, Dreda kept thinking about Fortuna. Tim's father was a villain who he had gone to visit countless times, so even if she was a hero, there was no reason she couldn't visit her. But anxiety was hard to beat. What if she didn't want to see her because she got her arrested? What if she was mad because she stopped her plan? What if she just didn't care anymore? It was, in the end, stupid anxiety. During their first fight, the two of them had come to an understanding, but sometimes Dreda's mind liked to work against her. A few times she tried to go, telling herself it would be fine. Yeah, anxiety is real. As I said, this whole thing kind of started with me writing out anxiety, because anxiety. So, and this was toned down. I toned down Dreda's anxiety compared to the first draft. It was real. It was very real in the first draft. A few times she tried to go, telling herself it would be fine. She'd had her keys and gotten to the door, but given into anxiety at the last minute and stayed home. She was only here now because she made the mistake of mentioning wanting to go to Tim. The moment she did, he saw straight through her and drove her here himself. As nervous as she was, as much as she tried to talk him out of it, she was glad for the push. She was surprised to find that Excalibur had given her name as Fortuna Nagil. She'd never heard her use that name, but after a search on the name, it came up. A missing persons report from the year 2000. I'm surprised you remembered your name after everything that happened, Dreda admitted, since most didn't, including her. I was determined not to forget. I would repeat it to myself often during our time in hell. You can call me Fort for short, if you want. Fortuna is a bit long, Fort told her with a small smile. Dreda nodded. A treasure like a name was precious to products. She wasn't surprised that she protected it to the point she never told anyone. She smiled to herself a little, knowing somewhere one was more than happy to call herself Fort, a tough and impenetrable barrier. And what do I call you here? You don't want to be called For, and I'm sure you don't want me saying your other name in here. Fort asked, tilting her head. Dreda answered. Dreda Toth. Tim had advised her to go ahead and use her real name here. Excalibur was basically family to her, and it kept the prison as far away from her hero persona as she wanted to keep it in her. As she wanted to keep her real life. Suits you. Fort nodded in approval. Why'd you come here, Dreda? She asked, using her name for the fun of it. She wasn't sure. Just wanted to see you, I guess. Fort smiled warmly. We missed you too. Dreda smiled back, glad to hear it. They may have been on separate sides, but when it came to their last confrontation, but they still had a strong bond. Even if their history was complicated, they were family. Fort was the Selena to Dreda's Pandora. And like long-lost family, they didn't really know anything about each other now. and sat in awkward silence, trying to think about what to talk about. Have the others done anything since you put me here? Fort managed to find something, even if it wasn't exactly a conversation topic. Drita tilted her head. No, why? Did you have anything planned? No, I'm just a bit worried about them, that's all. Fort answered, leaning back in her chair. Why? 3 will keep things. She stopped when Fort gave her a look. A look of utter disbelief. What? 3 couldn't lead the blind, Fort snapped. As soon as someone says no, he'd say okay. The guy can't stand up to protest, he's a pushover. You know who's really gonna be in charge with me gone. Drada's body stiffened and her blood ran cold. She hadn't thought about it when she took Fort in. She thought that she'd just slow the weapons down by taking away their leader, but in retrospect, landing Fort in prison may have been a mistake. Exactly. Fort crossed her arms in a stern fashion and took on Drada's, and the look on Drada's face in a stern fashion, the look on Drada's face giving her all the reply she needed. You know too won't be as restrained as I am with his methods. I don't want to know what he's coming up with as we speak. No, Drada took a calming breath and hardened herself. Looking up to Fort with the fire in her sea blue eyes, she declared, I'll stop him. Me and the other heroes will stop him if he makes a move. We can look into him, though, just to make sure we are ready. What does he do now? One took a few moments and stared at the girl on the other side of the glass. Once upon a time, this girl hid behind her when 2 entered the room. Once upon a time, this girl would start crying when she knew she had to spend a day with him. The eyes that looked back at her now could have been a different person. They were hardened sapphires now compared to the shattered glass of years ago. She could see her resolve, her determination, and though there was still some fear at the topic of their conversation, she had confidence that Drada could face too and stop him from his chaotic stupidity. Fort smiled, a proud smile. But what's in it for me? She asked. What? Drada was taken aback. One of the ways you could stop him is by letting me out of here. I keep him in line. It's a guaranteed way to make sure he doesn't do anything stupid, she pointed out. I'd like to let you handle him, but I can't. The only way I can say he won't cause trouble for you is to help me stop him. Drada spoke, trying to push her finality, not letting the old woman move her an inch on this. Worth a shot, she sighed. Michael Duff. Thanks, Fort. She nodded her gratitude. They were awkward for a while again, as neither knew what to say. They stared around. Fort resorted to asking about the weather. But soon with a complaint about the food in prison, they managed to get a conversation going about the wonderful food discoveries they made outside the project. Apparently, 6 has gotten himself a little cookie addiction. And 3 likes to go to this Spanish tapas place with his girlfriend. Whoa, wait, what? Drada stopped her. It's like this type of dining where they have like lots of little bits and lots of stuff. Fort explained, completely missing what Drada was shocked about. No, I know. Well, I didn't know that. But a girlfriend? Drada spluttered. Oh, Fort nodded, realizing what she meant, then frowned a bit. We are allowed to have lives, you know. Even if we do class as villains. I know, I just... Drada tried to process it. She was still panicked at the idea of potential romance. No, not Drada's girlfriend, 3's girlfriend. 3 has a girlfriend. Drada has a Tim. She was still panicked at the idea of her potential romance and was glad Tim seemed too embarrassed to ever bring up the whole Sleeping Beauty scenario again. But then 3 wasn't her, and he always was the most laid back. She sighed. What's her name? She accepted it. Don't know. Fort shrugged. He's smartly keeping her as far away from us as possible. All I know is it's female. Dreda nodded, still curious, but seeing it was a dead end. What about you? Dreda asked slowly and curiously. Me? Again, Fort took a moment and realized what she meant, and sat back with a bit of shock at the question when she realized. Oh, no, hell no. What about you and Frigid Hack? She quickly deflected the question. Dreda's cheeks flared, and she struggled on the rebound. What do you mean? There's no... Her mind went back to the kiss. Oh, damn it, why did you have to ask? Fort looked at her, shocked. Wait, so there is actually something between you two? Dreda was flustered to hear the hint of annoyance in Fort's voice. No. Dreda started calming herself down. Or at least... not yet? She muttered at the end. Fort gave a loud sigh, slumping forwards onto her arms. What? Dreda frowned, even though she knew what she was about to say. I don't like him, she stated. Somehow I thought you wouldn't. Dreda smiled at the irony. She'd always noticed Fort didn't like people like her. Not as in other fire tricksters, obviously, but as in her personality. Cold, smart, proud. She didn't have to speak to people to tell. Fort just met people like her, and suddenly she didn't like them. I don't think you should either, she stated, and Dreda just nodded, knowing it was best not to fight Fort's protective instincts. Not long after the unexpected girl talk, Dreda was called out, her time up. Fort was taken back to her cell. She felt sorrow weigh down her chest when she watched the woman being taken away, but there wasn't anything she could do. She had to stay here, at least until Dreda maybe managed to talk her out of being a villain. Dreda left the prison, picking up her keys at the front desk, since they apparently classed as too sharp to take in, and headed outside. She emerged from the prison on the inside always seemed perpetually grey, squinting as the sun attacked her eyes. She couldn't tell if it always seemed dark in the prison because of the lighting or the prisoners' feelings of being trapped affecting the atmosphere. Probably the lighting, and she had far too much time to think as she waited for her call. In the car park, Dreda made her way to a familiar small blue car. She opened the door to the passenger seat. The driver, Tim, peeled his eyes away from his phone and took a good look at her. He didn't talk for a few moments, watching her face carefully. He was relieved to see there were no signs of any dark feelings after her chat with Fort. In fact, he was happy to see a small smile. How'd it go? He asked as she took her seat. Good, Dreda answered with a smile as she clicked on her seatbelt. I'm kind of sad to leave her here, though. Gotta serve your time, Tim shrugged, remembering the feeling himself when he had to leave his father here the first few times. At this point, he was used to it. Whenever he left his father in prison now, and he just hoped that he'd set a new record for days in before breaking out. The prison really needed to up its security against tricksters. Oh no, that's okay. I don't think I'll be going for too much longer anyway. I really appreciate you coming around and saying hello. Maybe not so much for the compliment bombing, but I guess nice things are nice, so you're cool too. You're cool too! You're cool for coming around. Bye, Luke. Have a nice day. Oi! Don't you start. Shut Shit. You're cool too. You're cool too! Yeah, hydrate. Do not dehydrate. Yeah, she did bring on herself. She nodded, but frowned when she remembered something she needed to bring up. But she made a good point, actually. I'll need you to look up what you can on a guy, if that's okay. Stop then. Stop. He raised an eyebrow curiously. Why? Ford. Ford? Her name is Fortuna, but she prefers Ford. Drada quickly explained, and with Tim's nod, she carried on her request. Ford pointed out that with her gone, Tu is going to be in charge of the weapons, which is very bad. I managed to get the name Tu is going by from Ford. Hopefully you should be able to look him up with it and see what he's doing, if anything. Try to stop him before he does anything. Tim nodded. Looks like I got my work cut out for me. Sorry. Drada apologized, and Tim put his seatbelt on and turned on the engine. It's fine. It's kind of fun having reasons to hack other than boredom, he reassured her. She shook her head, and Tim had been hacking a lot lately, mainly because of her. He'd been looking into her parents and the charity project Trickster had been funded by. Drada was shocked when Tim told her the project had been funded by a charity. When he explained that it would make the government look good to be giving money to the so-called charity, it made sense, but it didn't stop her feeling ill to think she was tortured under donation. She shook her head a bit. She had to worry about stopping what might happen and what might be happening rather than sitting in the darkness of what had already passed. So what's his name? Tim asked as they pulled out of the parking space. Michael Duff, Drada answered. I'll look at it after our meeting. Tim nodded. How long have we got for this chapter? Yeah, it's gonna go on a bit too long, because the chapters are still quite chunky. But that's gonna be a preview of Moon Girl 2, methinks. I'm gonna leave it there. If you want to read Moon Girl 2, then there's links in the description and you'll have to buy it. And I'm gonna start saying this for all the books, not just mine. It just kind of occurred to me more recently that I should be saying this when I'm reading these books, is if you would like to support me or any of the authors that I read on this channel but don't want to spend any money, go find their books either on Kindle, on Goodreads, and just leave them a review, because I've read you the whole book. You know about the book, so just go be like, I enjoyed this, leave them a nice review. That would do really good to help people, helping the authors getting thingy. Yeah, like I said, I don't think I'm going to read the rest of the Moon Girl series on the channel, because it just gets too much that people won't be able to like catch up with it. It's too much plot. It's too thick. But it's been really fun to revisit my characters again and read these books again. I love all my children, even the ones that are absolute shitheads and don't deserve to live, like Tu. It is a thick plot. It's gonna be at least 8 books long. It's thick. And I think that is gonna be me for the day. I will be back on Tuesday, where I will be playing, as promised, some Minecraft. I will mine some crafts, make some books. We won't be reading, we'll be making books. It'll be great. No problem, Rippy Dippy. And we'll be reading, what was the book? Spirits back in something. Mortal enemy of a game. Oh no. Does some stuff always go wrong when you do Minecraft? Yes. Thank you, Necromancer, Rippy Dippy, and Luke for being in the chat. Thank you to anyone who lurked, and thank you to anyone who watches the VOD. If you have not already, I would highly appreciate the like buttons being clicked and the subscribe buttons being clicked. Although there's been a lot of like buttons being clicked already, I'm really happy. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's fair. I didn't think it was going to be something I would play on stream, I'm not going to lie. But it was requested because I give chill vibes, and chill vibes come from Minecraft too. And the more I've thought about it, the more I'm actually kind of genuinely excited to get to it. I want to make books. I've looked up some of those farms you can make and stuff like that, and it should be very fun. I'm excited. And yeah, and I'll see you Tuesday. I had fun. I hope you had fun. This has been Brownie Rose Smith live from the Forbidden Library. See you on Tuesday. Bye.